pleasure to be here again in this beautiful place. And I'm repeating again who's with me on stage for those who really haven't got all the information from Jose. So to my right, I have Johannes Knirzinger. He is I'm German, so I can say it properly. That's not too bad.
You're the first here.
So he's head of partner management in an international press subscription platform that is called Newsado. I think that was founded in 2018. You will tell us more about this.
Yes.
He's from Austria, and he was holding several positions in the media industry before, in TV stations like Pro7 and weekly newspapers like Tip, and he also worked as an online consultant, so he's been around a little bit in the media industry. And further to the right, I have Magnus Nytell. He's from Sweden. He's the head of global expansion at Nextory. And he is in the past he was holding positions in the publishing industry, several. He was a long time at Bonnier, for example, managing director of the children's books publishing house Carlsen, and many more positions. So he has a lot of experience to share with us, I guess. So, and one interesting fact that I have to say, because I found this morning, last year he was in Madrid and he won the badminton European Championship in Madrid here, and I found this very interesting. So he's not only a publisher, he's a great sportsman, and he returned to Madrid, to this place of his great victory. So. Let me give you some introductory words about the topic. So the name of this panel is Thinking Inside Subscription Model for the Information and Entertainment Industries. So I think we are in a phase where subscription can be considered as definitely as a mega trend in various types of media. We have a lot of subscription services in the music business. You remember the long depression phase of the music industry going down, and actually the resurrection through subscription with very successful models like Spotify, for example, or Apple Music, who have today more than 100 million premium users, and this is Spotify, and also Apple Music contributes another 80 million paying subscription users to the music industry. So this industry is growing again, finally, thanks to a new model that they found, what is subscription. Another industry is like the TV series industry and movie industry. We all know that there's a couple of very, very big subscription models around, like Netflix, who are having more than 150 million paying customers all around the globe. But we also have competitors like Sky and HBO and Amazon Prime Video, so we can see a kind of wide landscape of players in the TV business. Then if we look into the news services, I'm really interested about your presentation, because there have been some companies trying to tackle subscription in news, and obviously it's not that easy. There is a Dutch company called Blendle that I am a customer, but sometimes I feel I'm one of the few customers. They were here, right? I remember well. Great presentation, I think 3-4 years ago already. They have a curated subscription model that offers me personally, as a customer, very nice articles every day, so I don't have to buy into subscriptions from every newspapers. I just get the articles that I like. I'm a heavy user. I like it a lot, because otherwise I wouldn't read newspapers anymore. But obviously it seems difficult to tackle. It's not become so big yet. And there's a company like Readly, I think this is also from the Nordics. They have presences in various countries. So a few companies trying to tackle the news industry as well. And when we look into book publishing, I would differentiate a little bit between ebooks and audiobooks. Actually, the book industry has a long tradition in subscription, because we used to have book clubs, a very successful business in Germany that somehow died because Sweden it could not make the transition from print to digital. We have now in the ebook sector, we have models from Amazon like Kindle Unlimited, what is very big in many countries. We have Kobo Plus. We have in the USA, we have players like Script. We have Scooby in Germany. But what I can say from my experience as a distributor, maybe it's between 2% in Germany subscription share and 10% in Spain. From what I know, I think the only country that has really made a huge success in ebook subscription is the Nordics, is the Swedish markets, and the Netherlands, from what I know. Maybe there's some more markets to come. especially in the Latin American market, where I think subscription can be very successful. But for now, well, ebook subscription has not reached a very, very high degree. If we look into audiobook publishing, it's probably a little bit different because we have, as I mentioned at the beginning, a different landscape here. We have an audiobook subscription landscape already, a lot of consumers that are used to listen to music in subscription models. So I think that's why we are already in a different place than with ebooks. So we have also a market player like Audible that introduced a so-called subscription model, what is not really a subscription all-you-can-eat model, but it's a model where people guarantee that they buy at least one book a month, so we can say it's kind of a subscription model. And we have players like Storytel, like Nextory, we will hear about this from Magnus. We have BookBeat, a Bonnier initiative. It's a wide landscape of players entering the digital audiobook subscription market. So I think this is going to be very exciting in the near future. So I think this just serves as an introduction to understand subscription is a mega trend in the media industry, and I'm very curious if Magnus and Johannes will tell us more about how to tackle the specifics of subscription in their industry. So I will ask Johannes to start with the presentation.
Hi, my name is Johannes Knirzinger. No worries, you can all call me Hannes. I'm from Austria, from Linz, and the company. No, it's you.
Oh, no. Okay. Oh. Okay. So what was my name? No, so I'm Magnus Nytell from Stockholm, Sweden, and I'm here to represent Nextory, which you were told about, the subscription service, which is all-you-can-eat service. You pay 16 euro, something like that, and then you can listen and or read as many books you want to.
Maybe you can use the other one.
The other one? No.
That's me again.
Can someone fix, and I can talk? So, I've been publisher for 27 years, and I've been working with Nextory for 3 months. So I really have the perspective from a publisher point of view, because I think in this sense we have a value chain from the publisher, from the author, all the way to the consumer, and you have a value chain where everybody needs to be reasonably happy. Otherwise it won't work. The author has to be happy, the consumer has to be happy. So it's very important to understand how the publishers think in these matters. I've been managing director for 3 different publishing houses within the Bonnier Group, and I've also been head of digital and also doing some other stuff. So I was also with Bonnier when we started BookBeat, so I know exactly how this business works. The numbers I was supposed to show from Sweden, it will maybe come. I think I know it by heart. 40% of all revenues from a publisher like Bonnier, comes from from subscription services. 40% of all revenues for fiction.
That works.
Huh? Okay, so understand 40%. This has really changed the book market. So as a publisher, you really have to think, will this book work in the subscription service? Will it work as an audiobook or not? If it will not work as an audiobook, then it will be problematic for the author and the book. So that's really changed. And it's not like I predicted some years ago that the ebook should be take a big part of, yes, okay. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. So where we are, from Sweden, which is a quite small country, we have been very successful with these kind of companies like Spotify, Klarna, for example, and Skype. And now we have this Storytel, BookBeat, and Nextory. So I think Sweden is really, really good in the digital companies. And we have been coming very far. We are hardly using cash anymore, which is also a big difference, I think. We don't use cash anymore. We pay with something called Swish, or we use credit card. So it's a big difference. Okay, so here are the numbers. 40% of the revenues come from subscription services. But it's not ebooks, it's audiobooks, which is by far the most important way of reading books now. So I know some of you guys might have worked with audiobooks for a long time. I did work with audiobooks for some time. And audiobooks was always regarded as something a bit on the side. And it's still regarded as, in many senses. But now, this is the biggest format growing in Sweden. So it's very important. So it's not ebooks, it's audiobooks. We're still lagging behind with the ebooks. Here is to show you the Swedish population, how many are reading or listening to digital books. I try not to separate e and audio, I try to make them as in digital books instead. That's much easier to think, to make it as a good business, I would say. So you can see, it's grown the last 3 years, from 20% to 37% that all Swedes are listening to an audiobook or reading, so it's digital book. So it's nearly double in 2 years. So if I go 5 years back, the numbers would be 5% or something like that. So this is a big trend in Sweden. You listen to things. You listen to podcasts, you listen to radio, you listen to different things. And this is to show you that we partly reach new customers, which is very, very important for a publishing business. We will discuss how to get publisher on board. And this is one example how to show that we reach new customers. Normally, for printed books, the old way, plus 60 years old, that was our main target group, I would say. Now, the main target group for this is 26 to 35 years old. So we reach partly a new audience. We get more readers for books, which is all about. Okay, Nextory. Very quick about Nextory. We launched in 2015, so we're a startup, and we're launching in different countries now. We launched in Germany this spring, and we'll launch in Denmark this fall, and we'll go for many more countries in 2020. So we're very successful in Sweden. We're number 2. Storytel is by far the biggest. We're number 2, and BookBeat is number 3. And I think about 700,000 Swedes are members of subscription services. So in a couple of years, that means 10% of the whole population will be a member of a book subscription services. Swedes are reading books, but in a different way now. Okay, we try to be consumer friendly. It's not so odd. So we just try to add things all the time because it's a good competition between Storytel, BookBeat, and Nextory. So we are improving, all of us. This is also very important to show for the publishers. 68% of the customers say that they are reading more books when they are using Nextory. I guess it's the same numbers for the other subscription services. But we reach new customers and they are reading more. So the publishers should be happy about this. For us, it can be costly. That's part of the business. They pay us €16 a month, and they can read as much as they want to. If they read too much, of course it's costly for us. But we have to take that. And they are happier. And we all the time try to improve. And this is a new way of selling books, and I'm not saying this is the best way. We will try to find maybe new packages, new pricing, add things, take things away. But we have to improve all the time. So this is just an example that we have added a reading diary for all members of the subscription service, so they can feel this is worth paying for. I read 3 books this month. I read 4 books the other month, and so on. So they can think they can be proud and happy, but they can also be, okay, it's worth paying these €16 a month. Okay, so we are confident that subscription services will be an important way to sell books in many countries, and Nextory, which is not in Spain yet, will be a very important player throughout Europe, I hope. Okay.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, once more. We are new to do. We are from Austria. We founded like 2.5 years ago and went public last year with our beta version. When we talk about subscriptions in media business, I think we need to take a step back and look what changed. Media consumption has always been, or communication has always been influenced by technical inventions. But when you look at the last 30 years, you see that the amount of technical inventions have like increased by thousands, and all these inventions have one thing in common, and that's not only in news publishing, it's also in books, that's also in broadcasting, in anything you take, we're all competing for the user's attention. This is the basic, and the user only has 24 hours a day that he can focus. I think it's less because you have to sleep, eat, and do anything else. And what we're facing is that all these services that came up the last years, they do have the same users like we do, so the new competition is for us as a publisher, not the publisher anymore, as for you as book editors, not the book editor next door. It's all these apps that we have installed, like Netflix, like Fortnite, like TikTok. And we said we need to create a service that brings back this reader attention, and the main part or the main advantage of these other services is the user experience is perfect. And what you do when you open up your devices, you take that one thing that attracts you the most. So we said we need a service that on the one hand, on the first hand, combines all the services, because our target group says, I don't follow just my regional newspaper. They say, I follow my regional newspaper, my soccer newspaper, the international newspaper, and I don't want to switch between websites and apps and have loading times, waiting until the page is loaded. Then I have these GDPR banners, the cookie banners, then I have the ads that I have to click away, and I don't see anything of the news. And this is the first step that we needed to take. And the second one is they want to read it on all devices. It's not about like news aggregators work on just on a Google account or just on an iOS. Our readers say they start in the morning with an iOS device. I do my headline screening. Afterwards, I'm at work. I have my Windows PC. In the evening, I use my iPad, and there I consume the content. And this is all based on one core. And most importantly, the news need to be relevant. In our branch, there's always this buzzword of too long didn't read. I don't think that this is true. People want to read long-form content, but not in the morning when you're in the underground and do a headline screening, because you want your daily briefing. But in the evening, or like it's business relating on your Windows personal computer at work, or maybe in the weekend on the iPad, you still want researched articles, you want comments. And the system needs to learn how to do this. Just to give you a short impression what it looks like, a video. So the features, just very brief, it's location-based. You only get the news from the places that you're interested in. Secondly, it's out of the bubble. We take content, we match similar articles, we bring it into a bundle so that in one point of view you see all the opinions of different publishers. In political perspective, this is very important, like you have a speech of Trump, then you have this point of view from CNN, MSNBC, up to CNN. Or I was in Edinburgh 2 weeks ago and I talked to a guy, a UK guy, and he said, now I see how mainland, European mainland publishers write about the Brexit. And I said, now I see how British publishers write about it. It's not about left wing, it's about right wing. Or like in soccer, as an Austrian soccer fan, it's sometimes funny to see how the German publishers write about our soccer, or do not write. And of course, you can do your channels, so you have this user experience of getting all the news right away. How we do this? It's simple. We aggregate content like news aggregators do. So we get RSS feeds, APIs, we bring it into our system where we analyze it with natural language processing. That means we extract information like the context, obviously, what it's about, the location where it's happening, the sentiment, how it's written, like positive, neutral, negative, or the style of the article. As I mentioned before, long form, short form content, and all those informations we match with the user profile. And the user profile we get because the user uses Newsado within our ecosystem. That means we have an Android app, we have an iOS app, we have a web interface, we have already 3 Alexa skills in the store. But we are in talk with Audi for the in-car entertainment system and Mercedes. We are in talk with Samsung for the ambient TVs. So when you enter the room, the TV automatically opens up your news feed. We have not found any solution on chatbot yet that we think that is a good reading experience for news, but as soon as we find it, we will create this channel as well. And how we make money? The whole vision of Newsado is a business model for publishers, one that works with digital content. Basically, it's the same revenue streams that ever worked in the publishing industry. It's fees and it's ads. So as a publisher, the service of Newsado is always for free, for the reader and the publisher. But as a publisher, you have the pricing strategy. You decide how much your content is worth. And it can be either free, then it's in the free content, and any user who chooses your source, and this is really important for us, because there is a link between the title, the brand, and the reader, and this is the trust. So you don't get all the news, you only get the news from the sources that you trust, that you choose to be in your news feed. In the bundle, you see them all. But in the newsfeed, this is the place where you trust the sources. If it's free, it's obviously not free, it's ad financed. What we do is we give a revenue share of the ads we do. We don't put ads on the content, on the article. We put it in the newsfeed, and the publishers get 60% of the share. If it's paid content, the publisher can put it either in a flat rate, this is a $4.99 subscription bundle, or in a premium model. We will talk about that later more. There's a story behind. And we always give this revenue share to the publishers. And so it's a flat rate model. As an example from the independent, most publishers choose not one stream, they mix it. They say the free accessible content on their website is free accessible as well in Newsado. They say the Minds content, this Ragwall content or Meet.paywall content is basically flat rate content. And the premium model, this is the daily edition, this is the kiosk, the stand. We also give this technology that we're good in. This is this API, this sorting of personalizing news. We give this to the publisher. This is one more of the benefits. And of course, a dashboard, because we think data is really crucial and important for publishers' work and for editors' work. We give them a dashboard that can answer questions like, is a topic trending because it's trending or because it's placed on the website? We don't have a placement because it's an algorithm, so we can answer such questions. And this is how our dashboard is set up. Our target group is, we're not in the situation where we say we want to cannibalize the revenue streams of the publishers. We are publisher driven, but we see that those people, this reader's attention that is moved away from the news, this is a way to bring it back. So this is the typical subscription model user from Netflix, from Spotify, anything you name it, but one that has not a subscription of publishing, of print subscription anymore. So thanks a lot, and looking further for the discussion.
Okay, a first question goes out to Magnus, and I know you have to leave in exactly 20 minutes, so we try to get through this in time. So tell me, Sweden is a very special country, obviously. It's special people with special habits, and you do many things a little bit differently than others. And I can say this as a neighbor, as a German. So tell me why subscription is so successful in the Swedish markets, and can this success model, can this be brought to other countries as well?
I mean, there are many ways of having a subscription model. We have Spotify, we have Netflix, we have other subscription models, and in Sweden, Storytel was the first one, and they have been actually doing a great job, I would say, to learn the Swedes to read through a subscription service. So in that sense, it was easier for us to sort of adapt and take the best part of the market. That's one way. But Swedes enjoy subscription services in many ways, and I think you do as well here. I know it differs a lot from country to country. But that's one question. Do the consumer want the subscription service? Another big issue is, do publishers want a subscription service? That might be a later question. But as I said earlier, it's very important that everyone in the value chain is reasonably happy. Otherwise, it won't work. So in Sweden, it's been a discussion, are the authors happy enough about this? And I would say, yes, they are. They are happy enough, because otherwise it won't work. Another question is audiobooks. Will audiobook be a big thing? I had a dinner with a Swedish friend who's been living in Madrid for 30 years, and I asked him, do you think audiobooks will be a big thing in Spain? And he said, no. Spanish people, they like to talk, not listen. So, I don't know. We'll see about the consumer behavior.
But I mean, this happier thing, just to be a little bit more precise on that, this happier thing, this means being super customer-centric. It means like Spotify has found a formula how to make music listeners happy. Obviously, Storytel and also Nextory have found some kind of formula to make audiobooks customers.
May I weigh in here, because sure, it's user-centric. The user experience is the most important and most crucial stuff in the whole process, but Netflix, they deal with 5 companies for the legal rights and the terms. If you deal with publishers, you have like 10,000 publishers, and then you need to find a model in between. Because it's not, flat rate model is not something that publishers want.
That's right, but I mean, like, we all start at the customer, right? So we try to find something that works for the customer, and I think you found something, at least in the Swedish market, that works for the customers. And I think like this little bit of formula, this is the interesting part, I guess. And because otherwise, as I said, in the market we have found like a little bit of Kindle Unlimited working here, a little bit of like ebook subscription working in the Netherlands, but Sweden is truly a subscription country.
Yeah, and the key thing is that we all Swedish services have all the published books throughout Sweden. It's not like that some retailer have some of the content and another retailer have some of the content. Yeah. All of us have all the content, which means as a consumer you can rely that the book will be in the service. Yeah, that's very important, I would say.
And that's a difference to some other subscription situations. So, Johannes, you launched a service in an area where some companies already tried to tackle it. As I said, I'm a Blendle customer and I like it, and what you said, it's kind of like the next step. It's even more advanced from a technology point of view, and you have like some features that I find very interesting. So what are you making different to others before? Because just to mention one thing, I have only seen like New York Times, Washington Post, some huge examples and success stories, Financial Times maybe, but even like the rest of the newspaper industry, even big ones like Spiegel in Germany or Zeit in Germany, they have failed to build up their own successful.
Oh, there are some, even in Germany, if you look at Bild, if you look at Welt, they do make profits meanwhile. The thing is, what we make different to others who tried it before, you need to look at the whole process. As an example, Blendle. Blendle is always, they only take paid content, it's only print content, and sure, people who are already willingly paying for the product are easy to be turned into the digital product. But what about the free content? Most of the publishers live from the free content within the news area. So you need to find a way to finance, to monetize free content as well. And what others not doing, what we don't think they do correct is like this, you always have this sorting, you have this distribution of the headline, but then you have the backlink to the website. And this, we think, is one of the most crucial steps we need to eliminate and show it within the system, because then you don't have these loading times. So UserDo's approach is to look at it the whole perspective and to make a business model that works for all.
So finally, you want me as a consumer to just use UserDo, and I don't need to go to my other news websites anymore because I find everything relevant in this.
UserDo. Yes.
Okay. I mentioned it's a global megatrend. Nevertheless, we have different dynamics in each country and in each industry. So between movies and across the industry, there are different dynamics. Between the countries, there are different dynamics. Why do you specifically believe that subscription is this solution? because you're expanding, so you must be confident that it's the solution for audiobooks in the future.
I guess for book selling, I think it's quite easy. I mean, as a publisher, you want to publish and sell the books in all possible ways, in all possible channels, if you get the right price. That's quite simple. So I don't say that we only need subscription service. We need all kinds of distribution, all kinds of sales ways of selling books. So this is a good thing in Sweden, and I'm quite confident that I think it's a consumer-friendly model. It should work well enough to be successful in most countries, I would say. But when we are choosing what countries to go to, we also look at the consumer behavior regarding Spotify and Netflix. Do the consumers enjoy that kind of paying for products? That's one of different aspects.
Do you have specific targets, like what kind of market share do you think you can get in certain markets?
We calculated that an overall estimation of digital news consumption in Europe is 270 million users for daily news. So the market is big. It's
Absolutely.
big enough for more than one company to compete within the market. But what we say is, as a publisher perspective, we need the competition between the publishers. But right now it's influenced by Google, it's influenced by Facebook, it's influenced by all these devices. But we need one ecosystem where the publishers can have the competition between themselves anymore. And we see that subscription, from a user perspective, is already there. People like subscriptions. It's not the question anymore. In our case, it's that the publishers are not so happy, or it's not the strategy of a publisher to use subscriptions. Our beginning was in the beginning when we did our first business development projects, it was a 29 euro subscription for publishers for a month. So we asked the consumers, they said, yes, obviously I want to do it. And then we asked the publishers and they said, no way, how you want to share it? We make 24.99 with a subscription. So we saw we need to change. That's why we switched to an approach where we say we have the kiosk for the publishers who wants to sell their prices themselves, and we have a flat rate. And we will expand those flat rates by topics, by genres. So we will have a political flat rate. So you get the political comments, you get all the political articles within this pool. And then you have a sports flat rate. So we want to break up the subscription model for the news section.
Okay, so do you think you help publishers with experimenting in your ecosystem?
Yes,
so help them in a little bit and let them try out?
We know that this is a feedback we often get from publishers, because what we do is, when we talk about the legacy brands, the Times, the Welt, they think they have more developers than we do.
Yes.
So they know already what they're doing, but we are facing like a huge amount of publishers, but it's publishers from regional areas. They're not technology companies. They are publishing companies. We are the technology company, and what we want to give them is this framework. We want to help them get into this. So yes, obviously, for a lot of publishers, this is an argument to join Newsado.
There's a big difference. I mean, when Spotify were so successful, why you might be so successful is that the reading industry, the newspaper and magazine industry fight. They have big issues. The music industry had big issues with piracy some years ago, if you remember. That kind of crisis helps you to get content on board, of course. We don't have that crisis in book business, which is good. But publishers tend to be too satisfied with the current business instead of facing what alternative there are in the long term. So if the publishers are not open-minded enough and just are happy to have these nice publishing houses with a great view over the garden and think this is good enough, then they will lose ground in the big competition in a few years.
I think one of the key fears, apart from cannibalization, what is always a discussion, will this model cannibalize and steal revenues? What is always a very difficult discussion, because you should try and experiment before you say it's cannibalizing. An audiobook is a good example that actually, on top of a healthy Audible market, a lot of audiobook subscription services come and bring more customer to the market. And another good example is that when Apple Music came to the music industry and Spotify was kind of, ooh, what's going on? The owner wrote a tweet that he quickly deleted after that, so because he was a little bit anxious that something really bad would happen to Spotify. What happened, actually, Apple brought another 50 million, 60 million, 80 million users. Now they have almost 200 together. Actually, both grew. So, but this
the
also...
market size is the share is so immense, it's so big, and that's why so many other services are trying to compete with this, because in the end it's just a product, and the product is user attention.
And of course, books have to be in the face of the customer, in front of the customer, talking about books. And I think another fear is also that one dominating player, whenever you start trying, I've had these conversations a lot in the US recently. Last week at Book Expo, publishers were saying, we don't try out streaming services so much and all-you-can-eat models because we have a healthy Audible business in audiobooks. We are a little bit afraid that this could be destroyed. I was kind of amazed that Audible, the company that is not every publisher's best friend, now obviously is your best friend, and you want to protect your best friend from others. That I find interesting. So, is there a fear that in this market we have a winner-takes-it-all situation finally, where Nextory or whoever takes the lead and then rules
I don't think
the world?
it's a question of a winner takes it all, but I just remember another variable of answering why subscription services are so big in Sweden. Sweden is an Amazon-free country. Do you remember how it was? So
another thing that you made interestingly.
But you had a legal issue that you don't have the copyright laws for music. I read this is one of the reasons why Spotify grew so big so fast, because they didn't have to pay the revenues.
No, I don't think so. I think it's the same. So I think what was the question again?
No, if it's going to be a dominating market, because when we look at the movie industry, we now have HBO, we have Netflix, we have a couple of players, probably one pretty big one, and the others are the challengers. But is the publisher's fear of having a market finally that is owned by the winner?
Yeah.
Is that a
they
fear?
shouldn't. They really shouldn't. I mean, it's good for a publisher to have different retailers. Of course it is. For negotiation reasons, for reaching out to customer reasons, for long-term reasons, they should always looking for more opportunities to sell their books. So book publishers have a tendency of being too satisfied. Satisfied in all senses, too much. And that's a big danger for book business, I would say.
I think we are in a very crucial moment, because obviously we have the two gatekeepers that everyone is talking about. It's Google and it's Facebook when it comes to news, because they decide which news you read, so that's all about the distribution. But it's getting more complicated, because now you have Apple News trying to get into the system. They have the devices, 1 billion devices out there, so there is a huge possibility to enter the market. So we have 3 American countries trying to get into Europe, and then we have this ByteDance conglomerate about TikTok to Tiao, and they bought News Republic from France.
So you would say the situation can only get better?
No, I think it can get worse, because if you now have 3 American conglomerates, and then you have this Chinese conglomerate trying to enter the European market, I think we're in this situation where we quickly have to decide on an alternative. And this is basically the vision of News to bring up a European system that is owned by the publisher. Our exit strategy is to be more like sold to the publishers one day.
It's interesting that there's always a kind of group of winners, like it's Google, Facebook who make money with the ads, then it's the other ecosystems that you mentioned that are coming in. So maybe the news market is the most complex market regarding subscription.
And now you have not only the situation, and to Tiao, the Chinese company, it's worth $74 billion right now, and it's only 6 years in the market. It's bigger than Uber and younger than Uber. They are monetizing better than Google did in their first 4 years. So there is a big movement. And they have TikTok, and TikTok is one of the biggest services in the moment, or the biggest growing, fastest growing services. Okay. So there is a fear. The question is just who will decide about which news will be delivered and who writes the news. We always have this problem that those services favor a lot user-generated content. In our point of view, it's the trust between the brand.
Interestingly, this all brings us finally back again to content, again and again, because when you look at the latest or the previous Apple keynote, it was 80% about content. They finally understood that they have to compete with their ecosystems and services with content, so now they pay a fortune to producers. So the movie industry is like in a perfect condition at the moment. You don't get any catering service in Berlin because they are all making TV series for Netflix, for HBO, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So the content producers are back in the game there, and this brings me to the originals question. So we see a lot of content services that get their customers by having content exclusively. Is this a strategy that both of you would be pursuing?
No, we are not a content delivery. We do content delivery, but we will never produce content. We are a system that wants the competition within the system, so we need all the titles in the system.
Okay.
This is publisher-driven, so bloggers are not our target group as partners, but we have no interest in producing our own content or excluding content that is relevant for our users.
What about you?
It's about the same for us. We do not have our own content. We don't publish our own books. Storytel do, and they work together with Norstedts, which is the second biggest publisher in Sweden. BookBeat is owned by Bonniers, which is by far the biggest publisher in Sweden. So they have their own content, but they are selling them to each other. And we're in the middle, the independent one, without any own content. And of course, it's pros and cons, I would say. Also, when we come to a new country, how to do, should you produce and make your own products or not? As a ground, we do not produce our own content. We want to sell the...
But would you sign exclusive deals with publishers to have an attractive portfolio or a better portfolio of titles than any other service?
No, there's no exclusivity at all.
Okay.
No. Not in Sweden, and in other countries I know there are some of them, and that's, for a start, bad for the consumer. And if it's bad for the consumer, then it will be bad for other people in the value chain, including the author.
It's a very interesting point. Sorry for interrupting, because even if it's bad for the consumer, it may be great for the industry. Because if you look at like the Netflix and Game of Thrones situation, like everybody has signed up with HBO for Game of Thrones and has Netflix on the side, or it's like the standard service for everything. Yeah. So actually, the industry has two subscription services in their customer base.
Could be, yeah. So
this could be with audiobooks. I was talking about this the other day with people in the audiobook business. Could it happen in the audiobook world that Storytel owns this part of the catalog? You have this interesting fight at the moment in Sweden with Storytel and Bonnier, and another catalog is in this service, and so we all make more money in the industry because people use more services and they value it, and I mean, people in the movie industry, they pay.
Yeah, so that could be a situation, and in Norway, which is another Nordic country, they have that situation. We have Cappelen Damm own Storytel, they only sell their own books. Okay. And then you have Lidboksförlaget, which is only sell their own books. It's like HBO, like Netflix, and so on. But it's not a healthy way of doing business, I would say. So, if it's possible to avoid, but it's, if we would like to start to produce our own content in Spain, for example, it would take time. It would cost us a lot of money. It will take risk, and we would compete with the existing publishers. Right. So that are the disadvantages. The advantages is that you might have exclusivity in some years, and you might have lower costs. Okay. So there are pros and cons with those both models, I would say.
I've got two questions left. One is about pricing. Is it necessarily a low price strategy that you have to pursue in subscription? Maybe you can answer that. Is it all about the price or not?
In a flat rate model, you need to get into the market with a low price strategy, because there is only an amount of money that the user has available for subscription models. And we already have the broadcasting industry, we have the audio industry, we have the podcasts coming in, the book industry and news. People don't have this feeling when you have a subscription with a print, then you have this haptical feeling, and then you see the brand value, it's distributed, so the value is more than if it's a digital product. But this is only for the flat rate models. The basic revenue stream of monetization is the kiosk, and within the kiosk the publisher should decide himself or herself, because it's their content, it's their pricing strategy. We advise, we say to them it's better to separate, to differentiate between free and flat rate and paid, but it's their decision.
Do you have a certain price?
We would like to have as high price as possible, of course, if the consumer agrees. But that's also, I think, we have to find out and do in different ways. I think 2 years ago we only had one price, I think. But now we have 3 different prices, so we will have to turn all that and obviously fine-tune that all the time.
Absolutely. So the learning curve is very crucial, I guess, in this with pricing, because when you look at Netflix, they can now raise the price every year by one euro, and nobody cares. You just get this email and say, okay, yes, okay, €1
because
more.
my brother
I will of course finish this TV series, and I'm not.
My brother pays for the account. So.
Yes. So maybe we end up in a household with 5, 6, 7 subscription services. What would probably in total increase the money that people pay per month to the media industry. What is interesting perspective. Yeah. So a very short answer for the last question, please. So crystal ball, where will you be in 5 years with your service? What's the goal? So very
our goal is to set up a European player that separates the Asian and American companies from the European market, because we think this should be owned by European publishers. It's our market, and it's not that we want the decision to have ourselves, and obviously this should be called News-a-Do.
Okay.
And I think Nextory is an important player in 15, 20 countries in Europe, and probably, hopefully, in Latin America, South America, and Asia, might be.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. It was very interesting to talk to you. Many insights, so give it a go.
Thank you.